So I have this 12-year-old in my building who's babysitting the kids tonight.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I think she's got quite entrepreneurial
I love that.
because they posted in the laundry room. Sahara and Zohara, right? These two girls are going to babysit together for a total of $12. But it seems like...
We're starting. No, welcome so much. Welcome all of you to the Sharpe Way. Yes, I'm Larry Sharpe here. Yet another Monday evening. I am so happy you decided to join me for an amazing 2-hour show. Yes, you have to stay all 2 hours. It's the rules. If you want to join us in the program, you can call us in at 573-427-5463. Why would you want to call in? Because I am very lucky today. I have a guest who is an amazing man who I know personally, who I've seen in action, a man who has beaten the IRS, a man who has beaten the feds, a man who has defended people who need defended, a man who cares tremendously about our justice system. He is the man, the myth, the legend himself, the principal of Varghese and Associates, my friend and my hero, Vinoo Varghese. Thank you for coming, my friend. Thank you so much.
Larry, happy to be here. How
Awesome. Look. You literally have gone to court and beaten IRS. You literally have defeated the federal government where others, fail miserably. But I got to go someplace else, though. You're the son of a taxi driver.
I am.
Tell me about that. How does that kid become the man you are? Tell me how that happens.
I'm just going to say that I'm very blessed. I mean, this is where I believe in America.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Bombay. My dad was a textile worker in Bombay. If you saw Slumdog Millionaire, it wasn't exactly that.
Right. Okay.
But, we humble beginnings. My mom was a nurse. And so my mom in the 70s, I'm just sort of aging myself here, Larry.
Right. I gotcha.
You're getting an idea, get a little history lesson.
Okay.
But in the 70s, my mom got a visa to come here.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a huge nursing shortage in New York State.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So what America did, or New York did, I guess they petitioned. I'm not sure how it worked exactly, but New York was able to get a bunch of people to come over from India and the Philippines.
Got it.
So if you look at a lot of the hospitals in New York, some of the older women, now older,
Right.
are from India and from the Philippines.
And that was your mom was part of that wave.
My mom was part of that wave, correct.
Wow, very nice. So here you come. You were raised in Queens, right?
Correct.
So New York City boy like myself.
Yep.
Absolutely. So you're raised in Queens. I remember, you told me you went to a pretty tough school, right? Chaminade, right?
That was high school.
High school, pretty tough
Yeah.
school. So you go into a pretty tough school. Kids didn't like you there.
No. Chaminade was fine. It was very interesting.
Okay.
Chaminade was... most of the stuff, the adversity I faced was in grammar school.
Grammar
growing
school.
up in Bayside.
Oh, was that right?
Bayside was a tough place,
You
man.
Bayside people.
Bayside was
you
a tough
messed with my
place
boy.
for someone of my complexion. It wasn't easy growing up.
Right.
But, it was fine. I dealt with a lot of stuff. I dealt with... people don't like to use the word today, but, because they don't want to say that it happened. But I dealt with a lot of, racism growing up, not just from whites, but from blacks.
Sure.
Because, neither group was
Sure.
looking for somebody to pick on.
Right, absolutely. I
The
got it.
Italians and the local
Right.
blacks
Right.
thought they could pick on me. But fortunately, my mom took me to karate class, or actually, let me correct myself, taekwondo class.
Taekwondo, yes. I actually studied Taekwondo as a kid too.
Yeah,
Believe it or
so
not,
that
yes.
that helped, and it was great. And then I went to Chaminade, and I thought I was going to fight because I went to mostly a overwhelmingly white high school, but I didn't experience that kind of stuff at all.
Nice. Oh, good
in
for
high
you.
school.
But now you became a prosecutor.
Don't remind me, Larry.
I'm just saying. You became a prosecutor, right? I mean,
I try to disavow that part of my life and career.
yeah.
Not exactly true, but
No, you became a prosecutor. And I guess I remember something you told me, which really resonated with me. You actually said that there are cultures in kind of each, I guess, district. Is that the right way of saying it?
Sure.
There are
District,
cultures in each district. And I think the average person doesn't think that. The average person thinks that, every DA is the same and they follow the law and that's all they do and that's how it works. But you said there's a different culture in almost each district. Explain it to me.
So I was a prosecutor in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different. I joined the Brooklyn DA's office in September 5th, 2000.
Ah, okay.
And it was a phenomenal experience. And I was surrounded by people who we questioned everything.
Mm-hmm.
We just assumed everyone was lying to us.
Sure, right. But you're saying everyone. You're saying even cops?
Yes.
So you assumed everything. You had the idea that everybody had to prove it to you.
Correct.
Whether it was the cops, whether it was the civilians, whether it was the crooks or the good guys or the bad guys, didn't matter to you.
Everyone had to prove, because we knew that to secure a conviction, we had to overcome great odds.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not only securing the conviction, but also securing it, making sure it withstood it on appeal.
Okay.
So in our view, we only brought a case that we believed was absolutely legitimate. Under our watch, it was our mantra amongst my small group of friends, and it wasn't everybody in the office, but amongst a group of the people that I surrounded myself with, many of whom I'm still friends with today.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, no innocent man will ever get prosecuted under our watch.
Mm-hmm.
And we made sure of that.
Got
and
it.
so
I don't think that I can say, I think most people would think that's not true of a lot of prosecutors, particularly after watching some of the Netflix TV shows, specials, things like that. I think there are a lot of people who think that that's not true.
I think you're wrong, Larry.
Tell me.
Because the reality is the majority of Americans watch Law and Order growing up.
Ah, okay. All right.
So the majority of Americans are believing that prosecutors are good, wholesome people committed to justice at all costs.
There we go.
Right?
I like
That's
that.
the character that Sam Waterston played,
Yep.
right? And it was under that sort of rubric, which was set in Manhattan,
Right.
which couldn't be further from the truth, but that's a whole other point. Right? We're in Manhattan broadcasting this show. Unfortunately, most of the prosecutors weren't, well, let me just, we can come back to that. But there's just this perception.
Right.
And I got this when I was a young prosecutor in the early 2000s. People were like, "Oh, you're just like Law and Order." And I'm like, "Sure."
Right, yes. I'm Sam Waterston. It's me. Yes,
Yeah,
of
it's
course.
just me,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely,
Like
yeah.
50 years younger. That's me, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that's the thing that I got, that
Okay.
there was this perception countrywide that the prosecutors are good guys. Why? Why, Larry?
Because they wouldn't bring anybody to jail unless they were guilty, right?
Who do they work with?
They work with the cops?
Correct.
Ah, there we go. Work with the cops. There we go.
And so the
Okay.
majority of Americans believe cops are good.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say for the most part, most cops are good. And I'll say that, right? But the reality is that it's a little different. Most of my criticism of government is not against cops.
Mm-hmm.
It's against prosecutors.
Okay, so you look at it from a whole different view.
Right. Because I believe as a prosecutor, you have a much higher duty. The street cop is only going to bring a case if you allow him to.
Got it. Okay.
Eventually, if you keep dismissing cases, right, and you're bringing it in because you're like, there's no probable cause, or what's this, you can't withstand it, you're not going to survive in the grand jury, the street cop is going to learn. One of the criticisms
Hold
we
on.
got...
So what you're actually saying here is, and this is something that I think most people don't get, that part of the cultural issue within a police force is the district attorney's office.
Beyond, yes.
But what I'm telling you is most people always go, oh, it's the police chief.
No.
Right? The police chief is a bad guy if the cops are doing the wrong thing. It's all the police chief's fault. That's all it is. So you're telling me that it's not just the police chief. Maybe the police chief, obviously, it's possible.
Sure.
But you're saying that a huge part of police culture is based upon the DA's office.
Absolutely. Because one of the criticisms we would get from police officers who... And I was a prosecutor from 2000 to 2006. So one of the criticisms we'd get from cops who had been in different boroughs, particularly in Manhattan, would be like, they would put this through in Manhattan. And I go, you're in Brooklyn, baby. This is Brooklyn, baby.
They're like, I gotta get transferred.
We would have these fights with cops. Now, the good cops understood that.
Right.
And they understood that, hey, we had a higher level of scrutiny because the jury pool was much more skeptical of police officers in Brooklyn in the early 2000s, right? At least when I was there. My understanding has changed now. And also the judiciary was much more skeptical
Got it.
of prosecutors.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guys that became judges
Mm-hmm.
in Brooklyn in the 2000s, early 2000s, and my understanding was before, I can only speak to when I was there,
Right.
were more skeptical of prosecutors because they were skeptical of the police and held us to a higher standard. So a former prosecutor who became a judge was more skeptical of us.
Got it.
Was
I see.
harder on us as prosecutors
Right.
than they were on the public defenders, as it should be.
Sure. Absolutely.
When I became a criminal defense attorney in 2006, my eyes were like bust open
Okay.
because most of my cases were not in Brooklyn.
But hold
They
on
were
now.
in Manhattan.
Let me ask an important question. What makes you make that switch? I mean, you literally switch teams,
Yes.
right? I mean, you literally switch teams. What makes you? I mean, look, from what you tell me, from what I understand, you were a good prosecutor, right? I mean, I've seen your awards. You're a good prosecutor. Why leave that? Go off and stay a prosecutor, or become a judge, or become a DA, or whatever. Why leave and decide? You know what? I'm going on my own. And you went on your own. You didn't even go join some big firm or something, right? I mean, you could have done that. That was an option for you, and you didn't. You instead said, no, I'm going off on my own, and I'm going to be a defense attorney.
The reality was, culturally, I was no longer a prosecutor.
Okay.
And ultimately, even in an office that was this forward-thinking, and let me just give a shout-out to my former boss.
Okay.
Rest in peace, Charles Hines.
Okay.
He was criticized at the end of his career because of stuff that went on. There was a lot of criticism, particularly in the New York Times. That man was the most progressive prosecutor in the country. Ken Thompson got a lot of credit for a lot of the stuff that was undertaken under Hines. But Hines got a lot of publicity. He stayed too long, right? If you remember the DA in Batman, The Dark Knight,
yes.
he said, you either the hero or you live long enough to be the villain. Unfortunately, Charles Hines lived long enough. It stayed long enough to be the villain.
Right.
That was his mistake. He stayed too long. The reality was that by the time I was there, 4+ years, I realized that there was a certain culture, even in a place as progressive as Brooklyn. I wasn't that guy.
Got it.
I wasn't there, and I knew that, it was there. I didn't, look, I was, and I've said this, and I'm not proud of it, but I was a soldier in the war on drugs.
Sure.
I'm not proud of it.
Right.
I wish I figured it out earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but had it not been for my experience in the DA's office,
Sure.
I may have never figured it out.
That's true. Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Until you're on the front lines and you're realizing, why are you prosecuting these guys, these either low level, even mid level guys, and some high level guys, and you're like, what's this all about? I mean,
Right.
to me, and you've had a couple of people on here over the last few weeks talking about the massive failure the war on drugs has been. I couldn't agree with you more.
Right.
I couldn't agree with your guests more.
Mm-hmm.
But you had to actually go through that
Right.
as a lawyer, as a prosecutor, as a human being to understand really what that means. And I got to go through that, and I was like, I don't want to be part of this anymore.
Got it. Okay.
I don't want to be part of the
So
system.
then, once you figure this out, I mean, you could have just bought a franchise McDonald's, right? I mean, you could have gone off to some big firm. There were a lot of options. Why on your own? Why the entrepreneur?
Because I enjoy criminal defense, and I enjoy the role. Listen, I didn't go into law school to go do real estate. I didn't go do corporate transactional work.
Sure.
You could shoot me in the head. I'd be so bored. And to all my friends who are corporate transactional attorneys, I love you.
Right.
But I just
Someone's
can't do
got
what
to
you
do
do.
that work too. I mean, that's important
Absolutely,
work.
and I have
Very important work.
tremendous amount of respect for those people who can read contracts that are this thick with print this thin.
Mm-hmm.
Not me.
Got it. Okay. So you wanted to go out there and be almost like a crusader in a way.
Yeah, look, I mean, here's the thing that I see as a private criminal defense attorney. I get to fight the man and get paid to fight the man.
That's true. No, I like that.
I do it. I'm not a public defender.
Mm-hmm.
God bless the public defenders.
Yep.
They do absolutely wonderful work. I started realizing the good work that they were doing as an institution when I was a prosecutor. I had great relationships with the public defenders because the ones that were honest and like, okay, this is what we can do, and advocated for their client. Ultimately, the problem with a lot of the public defender's office or individual public defenders is that they're so busy trying to fight the man, they forget their individual client.
Got it.
And I had situations where they were like didn't take these ridiculously low offers, and their clients are doing life in jail now
Got it.
because they were so busy on a,
They were being righteous. And
they were being
yeah.
righteous and forgetting your first duty as a criminal defense attorney is your individual client,
Sure.
not the system.
Right.
But as a private criminal defense attorney, I protect my client. And if I can poke my nose in the eye of the government, I enjoy that.
Sure,
you know
of course.
this, Larry.
Yes, I know. I get it completely. Look, guys, real fast, if I could say, if you like what you're hearing, if you're enjoying what we're talking about, and if you think it's interesting, then do me a favor. Support this show. Support this show heading over to patreon.com/sharpeway. Give what you can give, and you even get some cool swag. Yep, some cool swag if you want. You can get that. Cool swag. I usually wear my Shortway t-shirt, but I couldn't because I was traveling New York State this weekend and I wore them all. So they're all dirty. I didn't want to bring a smelly shirt and make Vinoo angry at me. I didn't want to do that. So I wore this shirt instead. So if you can support us, that's awesome. We love that. And of course, if you want to call into the program, 573-427-5463. So now you've become a prosecutor. I'm going to say now you've become a criminal defense attorney. Trying to fight the man, win the battles, all those things. Do your former prosecutors, are they angry, don't care, jealous? What? Happy for you?
So the people that I was and am friends with, they're happy for me because
good.
You have to understand there are wonderful people who are prosecutors.
Mm-hmm.
Number of people, and I'm going to give a shout out to one of my boys, Dave Weiss. He might get fired after I said this. So sorry, Dave. You're a great guy. There's some great people who are who are prosecutors. And that's what they're meant to do. Understand, people have different callings in life, and I don't knock it. It just wasn't for me anymore.
Got it. Okay.
Right?
Makes sense.
But there are people who are exactly how you described, who don't like me, who don't trust me. The funny thing is that I deal with a different bias against me from people who were public defenders their whole life and now in private practice. They're like, oh, you were a former prosecutor. You were part of the man. You were evil.
Yes.
I'm like, really?
Yes.
We're on the same team, man.
Absolutely.
You know, get over it.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm going to grab a phone call. We got some people calling, so I want to jump on the phones if I can. I think I'm going to stay in New York since we are in New York. I'm going to grab Matt from Syracuse. Matt, are you there? Matt, you there? Matt, are you hearing me?
Hello.
Hey, Matt, how are you? It's Larry Sharpe. Are you there? I'm losing you, Matt. And I think I'm going to lose Matt. Matt, one more time. Are you there?
I like Dinosaur Barbecue in Syracuse.
Yes. Now, Larry.
Thank you. Talk to me, Matt. You make you sit here. I'm losing my audience. You got to talk to me, Matt. Tell me something good.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you at all.
No worries.
I work in radio. We won't talk about that, but Larry, I wanted to know. So I've been talking to some fellow, potential voters, Larry supporters from the last year ballots. I'm seeing the libertarians and a lot of these sample ballots seem to be just endorsing candidates, mostly the Republican Party. We want to understand that better. We want to understand your point of view on that, and how can we get more libertarian participation out here?
Okay, so you're not paying attention to our conversation at all, but no worries. I still love you, Matt. I'm glad you called, and I'm going to answer your question anyway. Yes, Matt, it's a very good question. And for those of you who don't know, I literally traveled the state this entire year, and yesterday I made my final stop, and I covered all 62 counties in New York State. I did the full Sharpe. Did it twice in a row. Did it last year when I was running and again this year. And I go around the state talking to people, meeting people, exactly what you're talking about, Matt. Here's the issue to remember. For those of you who don't know, in New York State, we have what's called fusion voting. In New York State, that means only about 7 states have it. You can have one candidate on multiple lines. So you can be on the Democrat line, the Republican line, the conservative line, all those lines, the libertarian line, whatever the case may be. For those of you who don't have it in your state, that may seem very weird and odd. And the reason why it seems very weird and odd is because it's very weird and odd. It really shouldn't exist, but it does. So that's how it works. So that's what we do. So what's happening now, since we just got ballot access and in New York State became an actual party, many people now want our line. So they petition us to get a second line. Democrats petition us, Republicans petition us, and then libertarians. To be forward with you, Matt, there simply aren't enough libertarians in the state to fill the lines that lots of people want to fill. Lots of them. Personally, and this is a personal note, I'm against fusion. I don't like fusion voting. I wish it didn't exist. But the reality of it, it does. And I don't think me or anybody at the top of our LP, if we're going to be libertarians and we're going to claim that we care about localism, we at the top should not be deciding whether local people decide to make fusion candidates or not. I can say I don't like it. That's not a problem. I have the right to say that. But I want the local communities to decide if they think they should be having fusion candidates or not. The idea that most of the Republican is simply not true. The best example I can give you is Cattaraugus County. Cattaraugus County right now has 14 people running. 3 are cross-endorsed Democrats, 3 are cross-endorsed Republicans, and 8 are libertarian straight. That's what I want across this entire state. Now, as long as we have fusion, I want local people to decide if they want to make a fusion candidate or not. There is a problem with that, and I think, which is what you're probably thinking about, is some people aren't really libertarians, and they're just kind of liberty-leaning Democrats or liberty-leaning Republicans, and they're going to take our line and win on our line. You're probably right. Some of them are going to do that. But in reality, probably no one will be on that line anyway. But assuming that they do that, also some of them are going to realize that we're actually better for them, that we actually are a better party for them, that we actually have infrastructure, that we're able to support them. And one of the ways of doing that is by me getting out there and doing press conferences for them, raising money for them, and showing them that we have infrastructure. This year is an awkward year for us. It's our first year. And it's also very easy for us because of election law to be able to cross-endorse very easily. So we're doing a lot of it. Some of it will be a disaster. I know that's your concern, Matt. And you're right. Some of it will. But some of it will grant us new talent and people who realize the party is a good party and they should be part of it. Did I at least answer your question, Matt?
Yes, Larry.
Okay, that was easy. Matt, you're easy. You're an easy caller. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Keep up the good fight, Larry. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to head to another one, a caller, which I think this person is paying attention to the show. We're gonna go to Texas now. We're gonna go to Ben in Texas. Ben, please tell me that you hear me.
I hear you, Larry. Can you hear me?
I can. What's going on, my friend? Talk to me.
Excellent. Hey, I wanted to ask your guest here. I wanted to talk about the logistics of prosecution. And it seems to me, and he's out of Brooklyn, that he probably dealt with a lot of cases, but every courthouse seems to have a capacity to how many trials it could actually have a week. Actually try.
Very true.
A lot of people plead out, and that is how a lot of these courtrooms are able to achieve these just astonishing number of convictions.
Yeah.
And actually, very few amount of people actually take their cases to trial.
Sure.
And in my belief, and this is just a theory, that if culturally there was a cultural shift where, pleading out just became something that we just don't do, and we take our cases to trial, that these courtrooms would really be limited in how many cases they could try, and therefore would have to pick the cases with the most merit. At that point. Right now, they're able to just assembly line justice.
Sure.
And I want to talk about the logistics and maybe how we can have a cultural shift towards taking our cases to trial.
I like it.
Jury nullification.
Oh, now, don't go down all these lines. Go down one line at a time, Ben. Come on, one line at a time.
Sorry, guys.
Let's do logistics first.
Like this guy.
Larry.
Yeah?
Larry, could you say your guest's name again? I didn't catch his name from the beginning.
Vinoo Varghese.
Vinoo Varghese. Nice to meet you, sir. You have any thoughts on what I had to say there?
Please.
You seem to understand the criminal justice system better than most people, and you are 100% correct. If everyone decided to challenge the government, whether at the state level, the federal level, the criminal justice system would come to a halt because the criminal justice system is built on plea deals, right? So in New York State and in the federal system, I can't speak to Texas, but I don't think Texas is far off. I think most of the states have similar plea ratios, it's about 95% of cases are resolved prior to trial.
95%.
Correct.
Wow.
So how many cases as a prosecutor could you try a week in one courtroom?
Well, it depends. So there are two types of trials. There are jury trials and bench trials. So the reality is jury trials are very difficult to try, and logistically they're very difficult. Bench trials, I mean, a prosecutor could try literally.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about going through full jury, voir dire, the whole process, because that drags out the court, and that really makes the court have to choose the cases with the most merit. Now, my calculations, your average courtroom can only try a few cases a week, actually go through voir dire, the whole trial process, sentencing, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, but Ben, I get where your point is, but here's the worry with this, right? I totally am on board with this, but the problem becomes immediately, who is going to sacrifice their liberty for this change? In other words, if you start doing this, all of a sudden, you're going to have people sitting in jail for years, and it's only going to be the poor people because they can't afford bail.
Right.
They're going to be sitting in jail for years waiting on their trials until they figure out what they're going to do. They're not going to just start letting people go. That's not going to happen. And on top of that, now those people who could be pleading out are not going to, and they're going to get hammered in sentencing.
And
you know, Larry, not everybody is an activist. Activism is not for everybody, but if we teach people these forms of activism, you know, we give them the knowledge, the tools, and they will fight.
I think that's true. Go ahead, Vin, go ahead.
Listen, here's the problem. And Larry's like, he and I have discussed this very issue multiple times. The reality is to fight the government, whether at the local level or at the federal level, requires two things. Number one, will. And number two, money.
Yep.
Most of the people, and Larry's 100% right, in New York, a lot of people are sitting in jail waiting, and there aren't enough public defenders to defend them to push the prosecutor's offices. So what happens is that there are deals that are cut, and both between the prosecutors and the criminal defense attorneys and mostly public defenders, because that's who represent the majority of criminal defendants in America. It's not a private criminal defense attorney like me, but a public defender. Especially the public defenders are underfunded, understaffed.
Yes.
They don't have the resources to investigate all these cases. And most of the time, the prosecutors, with the exception of certain cases, aren't going to spend the time to do the thorough investigation that's necessary. And that's because, and here's ready. You ready for this? I'm going to tell you something. Texas is better than New York.
I'm not surprised.
Texas has more open criminal discovery than New York State does. New York State is behind the ball on open cases. There have been a number of cases, high-profile cases, of innocent people getting the death penalty in Texas that spurred a change in the laws in Texas and North Carolina, particularly those two states. New York is behind the ball in open file discovery systems. The key to justice in America is open file discovery.
Explain that.
What that means is that as soon as a prosecutor gets a piece of evidence, he turns it over to the defense attorney, or she turns it over to the defense attorney. Prosecutors in New York, particularly in this county of Manhattan, have a culture of cowardice. They hide things. All four other city prosecutors have some form of open file discovery. Texas has open file discovery. North Carolina has open file discovery. Florida.
So hold on. So what that actually means then is the prosecution gets a whole lot more time to deal with that evidence compared to the defense team. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
They get to play with their cards down, yes.
Right.
And this should be a platform. This is a potential platform item for the New York party right here, Larry, open file discovery. And also, Vinoo, can we talk about maybe, I'm sure in New York there you guys can at least do, go pro se, at least to a degree. And I feel like if more...
If you want a fool for a client, represent yourself.
Yes,
I understand. I understand that. I understand that in its entirety. But however, if you happen to be sitting in a county jail, knowing the basics of how to file for a motion of discovery does put the court in a position where now they have to get their stuff together to some degree. What can we do to?
Let me touch a couple pieces there. Number one, as a general rule, that's not true. As a general rule, what happens, and if you've ever been, I don't know if you've ever been in the system, but if you've ever gone through the system, one of the biggest issues people have is when they've been arrested or when they're awaiting investigation or whatever it is, they want to do something. They want to be part of this. They want to take action. And the courts are like, we'll get to you whenever we get to you. Exactly the way you talked about it. There's a backlog, and they'll get to you when they get to you. But people who are in the system, they're like, but I got to do something. I want to do something. And then they start doing what you're talking about. I'll start putting motions, and they don't know when that motion should or shouldn't be put forward or what the words they put in it actually mean because English isn't legalese. And they start messing this up and messing that up. And now they can hurt themselves even worse. Now, again, your point of I force the government to act, absolutely true. But you might be screwing yourself. You might be screwing yourself in the process.
Larry, I would suggest that a motion for discovery is a fairly safe motion to file as a pro se litigant.
I would bet you that out of the thousands of people who watch and listen to this show, out of the thousands who do, maybe 10 understood the sentence you just said. Maybe 10.
Maybe we can educate people.
I'm good with that. We should be doing that. I'm in. Why do you think I got? I got this guy right here. That's why I got this guy right here for this.
Why do you think I'm calling you, Larry?
I love it.
This is where the change needs to happen.
Absolutely, my friend. But I want to go to the other piece you said now, and that is the idea of jury nullification. Jury nullification drives me crazy. I'm going to tell you why. I've been in a jury more than once in New York State. Judges literally say it is against the law. And people, when I tell them that, they can't believe that I tell them that. Judges literally say things like, if you don't think this is a crime, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Then many times you've heard this. It doesn't matter. You still have to convict. Now, you and I, Ben, know that's not true. But in New York State,
Vinoo,
that's true. It's true in New York State.
You have to get Congress to act, and you've got to get your legislatures to act to allow for a provision to do that, because the instructions that are given, both at the federal level and at the state level, are that it's unimportant how you feel, or they'll ask during jury selection.
That too.
Even if you disagree with the law, if the government has proven its case and has established the elements of the crime, will you convict? And the answer is you must convict.
That's correct. Yes.
If you can't convict, you're off the jury. Now, some people will lie, but most people, unfortunately, see jury service as a burden. And the way that I look at it, and Larry is a Marine, because there's no past tense with Marines. I know this. He has his USMC tattoo on his arm. There are judges, and I say this when I speak to jurors, that there's the highest duty you can serve this country and is as a member of the active forces. The second highest duty is to actually sit on a jury.
Yes.
And so the people don't see it that way. Most people, I get calls from people I know. They're like, dude, I got a jury summons. How do I get out of it? Yes. I'm like, do your goddamn civic duty.
Yes.
And do Judy, because we need smart people on juries. Yes. We don't need people who are trying to get off juries, because you need to question the prosecution.
Absolutely.
You need to pull them to the proof. I don't care what the crime is. Hold them to the proof. And the reality is that the systems, particularly the federal system, I mean, you can't get more of a system that is designed to ensure conviction than the United States federal criminal system.
Yes, you told me something that blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a mistake when you told me this. You said, and I tell the people this, and they think I'm making this up. You said that when it comes to closing statements, the government goes first, right? Then you go.
I still shake my head when I think about it.
Yeah, then defense goes. Then the government gets a rebuttal.
Yes.
Did you hear what I just said, Ben?
Yes. That's how it goes. It is a slightly tilted field.
That's not slightly, my friend. That is not slightly. That's super tilted. So basically, you get to say how bad the guy is. Then the guy goes, "I'm not that bad," and you get to go, "Yeah, he is. Don't listen to him." That's literally what happens.
Yeah, Yeah, there is a tilted field, and each courtroom does have, it's little nuances, but that is essentially how it goes.
Yep.
Right there. Now, one thing that I want to say before I go here is, just as us as libertarians and so forth with everything that's going on.
Vinoo didn't say he was libertarian. He didn't say.
Well, I know. I didn't say Vinoo. I didn't say Vinoo was. I didn't say
good.
Vinoo was. But Vinoo seems like a good guy, though.
That's true.
That's
that he is. Yes.
Appreciate that.
I feel like he would appreciate.
My mom
it.
would be very happy right now.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of this here myself. We as libertarians, we're bolsterous people. We fight amongst ourselves
all the time.
But I think that we should make a special effort. To unite around one thing. I think that we really need to prosecute in the court of public opinion, on Twitter, Facebook, what have you, the opposition, here together. There's a huge opportunity right now. Every time one of these folks says something outrageous on Twitter, it's a grand opportunity for us to go after them, and I don't think we're doing that enough. And maybe you guys can talk about.
There's an issue here, Ben. You talked about two different things. You talked about educating and going after. Those two things are absolutely separate things. I'm not saying we can't do both, but we can't do both at the same time, right? They're two separate things. And the guy I always bring up, and he's my hero, I bring up many times, is the guy Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis is a brother like me who goes out and literally talks to KKK members and gets them to become non-KKK members. It takes him literally years of befriending them and talking to them, and he keeps their hoods as trophies. This guy doesn't attack them at all. He just talks. I'm not saying we shouldn't go after him. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying these are two separate things, and we want to make sure that they are separate and not, because once you mix those two, if I'm going to argue with someone and get mad at them and try to win a debate, it's not to turn that person. It's to turn those watching, right? That becomes a show. The person I'm yelling at isn't going to change their mind and go, wow, Larry, you've called me an idiot. I now believe you. That's not going to happen. But the people watching might think that. So I just want to make sure that we're talking about this, that they are two separate things.
Yes. The court of public opinion is the jury that's watching whatever the debate is going down. But there is so much opportunity to be debating the Democrats and Republicans right now. It's not even funny. I don't see how we have time to be fighting amongst ourselves.
I'm with you 100%, Ben.
I want to see everybody on the front lines facing off against all these career politicians. This political establishment's got to go.
I am with you, Ben.
And now so do I. I'll see you guys. Great show.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. All right, guys, if you want to be super cool like Ben was, you can do that. You want to talk to the cool guys like us, be part of the Cool Kids Club, you can absolutely do that. You can just give us a call, 573-427-5463. And if you like what you're hearing, if it's interesting and special, then support the show. Head on over to patreon.com/Sharpeway and do a monthly gift. Yes, I'm asking you for a monthly gift. $9, $48, something, whatever you can do. Throw some bucks my way. If there are enough bucks, you get cool swag. Cool shirt like this. You get a cool mug, all kind of cool stuff. So come on by, support the show so that we can keep this thing rocking and rolling. All right, but I want to go to another step. When we were talking in the past, we would talk about the things that you do. And there are some times, it's great as libertarians. I know you're not libertarian, but I know libertarians always think that everyone who's convicted is innocent. That's not true.
It's not.
There are some bad guys.
Absolutely.
How do you square the circle that you've got to defend both people who are totally innocent, you've defended people who are completely innocent, people who are bamboozled by the government, and you've also defended people who aren't so great? How do you square that circle?
It's not that difficult, Larry.
Okay.
It's simple, and I tell this to people. It's the defense of those that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
It's the defense of people that make your skin crawl at times, that protect the rest of us. It's the defense. If you protect the rights of people you don't like or society doesn't like, then we are safer.
Got it.
Our families are safer. Our wives, our children, our husbands, our daughters, our sons, cousins, brothers, everyone is safer. Society's safer. because you have to hold the cops, whether it's the local police or the state troopers or the FBI, the DA, the IRS, and the assistant district attorneys, the state's attorneys, or the U.S. attorneys. You have to hold them accountable because, to me, that's what America's all about.
Right.
That's what being a patriot is all about. If you don't do that, then people are going to get screwed. Am I allowed to say?
You can say whatever you want. This is you can drop the F-bomb if you want to. Enjoy. All good. Of course, that'll be used against you, I'm sure, at some point.
I'm sure.
So, yes. So you probably don't want to drop the F-bomb now. You know, one day you might want to be a judge. They're going to bring this back and go, didn't you 10 years ago say on Larry Sharpe show the F-bomb?
It's going to happen.
They're going to come back and get you somehow. Absolutely. So, but then let's keep moving on you personally. Now you're a prosecutor. You're dealing with some big cases, right? You're on TV. Maybe people may not know. They can see you
mean
on.
a defense attorney?
Didn't I say that?
You said prosecutor.
Sorry, defense attorney. So I insulted you. I apologize.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to insult you.
I try to forget that. Come on.
Sorry, yes.
No offense to my boys.
Yes.
Still, who are prosecutors who are doing great jobs.
So you're a defense attorney and you're doing some big cases. You're having some big wins. Now you're on CNN, Fox, CBSN. You're on TV, and people are watching. You're talking about the R. Kelly. You're talking about the people who are getting their kids into school for free. What do they call that?
Varsity Blues.
Varsity Blues. Yeah. You're talking about those. You're talking about all these. Today you were talking about Tibbetts, right?
Correct.
Talking about
Molly
Tibbetts today on Fox News. So you're doing all this stuff. Does that change the way you think about the system? Because now you're looking at it from up here, right? You're not looking at it from the ground. You're looking at it now from up here. Does it change the way you look at the system at all?
Not at all.
Why not?
I because of my experience on the ground, it helps me comment from up here. Because I can see and I can actually go, when I go on TV, when they call me for my opinion, and it's all the networks that I'm on, I'm not a political commentator.
Right.
I'm a legal commentator.
Right.
So I give straight legal analysis. And when I do, I can say, boom, this is what's going on. So I have defended Robert Mueller. I've also defended Rudy Giuliani. It's just depending on the circumstances and what is being asked of me at the time, I can say, look, one of the things that people didn't understand, and one of the best compliments that I ever gotten, or I get multiple times, is people don't know my politics.
Right.
People ask me, we don't know who you support. You support Trump or you support? I was like, dude, I support the law. I support, belief in the system, which is, I will say what I think is correct based upon an interpretation of the law. And so when Giuliani, this is months ago, it's not the current stuff going on in Ukraine now.
Okay.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Months ago or last year was talking about and defending Trump, and people were upset. They were saying he's a former prosecutor. He was U.S. attorney. He was mayor, as America's mayor. I said, he's being a criminal defense attorney.
Right.
You may not have liked the way he did it, and sometimes he was babbling, and I don't know if that was particularly effective, but one of the things he understood is that you have to defend a person like Trump, not only in court, but in the court of public opinion.
So you're saying him going out there and people were hammering him about that, right? Oh, why is he talking so much, blah, blah. You're saying that him out there talking.
CNN and MSNBC were hammering him.
I'm sorry, yes. So, yes. So,
CBS, which I'm on most of the time, took a neutral view.
Okay.
You know?
So you're saying that he wasn't out there babbling and doing something wrong. What he was doing was trying to defend his client in the court of public opinion.
Yeah. So the U.S. Supreme Court said many years ago, 30 years ago, had a case where a criminal defense attorney charges were brought against him in Nevada. And they were upset because this criminal defense attorney defended his client. He went on to the courtroom outside the court and defended his client. They said that was unethical. That was brought by the State Bar of Nevada.
Wow.
Gentile, Gentile versus State Bar of Nevada. And the U.S. Supreme Court said he has a right to defend his client not only in the courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. Just because the prosecution didn't like it or the State Bar didn't like it didn't infringe on his First Amendment rights. So this has come up in some of my cases where the U.S. attorney, talks and says a lot of crap.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And tries to poison the jury pool. And I've been very critical. I've been critical of the U.S. attorney. And they try to shut me down.
Tell me about that. Now, you had a semi feud with our former U.S. attorney here in New York, right? Perara.
Correct.
Right? Why?
Because
Doesn't he get to, right? With your point, doesn't he get to go and have a press conference and say, I got the bad guy and he's horrible? If you're gonna say my guy's not horrible, doesn't he have the right to go out there and say, got the guy, he's a bad guy? Isn't it both okay? Or no?
No, because I think prosecutors are and should be held to a higher standard. Because prosecutors are there to prove their case, right? They're supposed to do justice. That's what they're supposed to do. Poisoning the jury pool and having these big bombastic press conferences where you're like, blah, 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 this guy did this guy did that, this guy did this. How does that help justice?
It does help conviction rate, though.
Right, because most
Yes.
jurors are going to be like, oh, he got charged, therefore he must be guilty. One of the questions that I ask people, when I'm in a jury, is I go sit next to my client and I ask the jury pool, who here believes that just because he's sitting here or she's sitting here, that he must have done something wrong? And a number of hands will go up.
Yep.
And I don't argue with those people. I was like, why do you think that? Oh, because clearly he must have done something wrong because he's sitting there. I said, thank you very much. Who else agrees with this person, right?
Right.
And that's my way of eliminating jurors who have those kind of biases.
Right.
And that's the reality of what we deal with as criminal defense attorneys in society. People are predisposed to believe that if you're arrested and charged, you must have done something wrong.
Well, I hear the word indictment, right? Once I hear he got indicted. So as soon as I hear that word, I know most of my friends go, oh, he's guilty, right? He got indicted. That means he's guilty, right? Many people think if you're indicted, it's the same as convicted. And sadly, often it is. But people believe that. I mean, how do we, and this is, I guess, to Ben's earlier point, how do we educate people so that they don't think that because some guy got indicted, that all of a sudden now they're guilty? Or do we? Is this a lost cause?
The truth is that social media and Netflix have a profound effect on society.
Netflix.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Making a murderer. And I've yet to see it. I want to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the attorneys who defended the younger person in the case. Those shows have had a greater profound effect on society.
Sure.
They're changing things, particularly with the younger generation.
Right.
The older generation, guys our age, Larry.
I know. Guys with gray hair. I got you. Yes. Yes.
Are the Law and Order generation, right? But Netflix has affected people much, younger than us. And here's the hope for America. They will look at prosecutors with that discerning eye. They will look at the police with the skeptical vision.
So Netflix is saving the country.
I hope.
We hope. I love it. Okay. I'll say we just give a plug for Netflix. Netflix, you should send me some money. We're plugging you. Yes, absolutely. You guys should start putting a subscription now. Thank you. So, okay. So with that in mind, is there a way for us? I ran for governor last year. And one of the things I talked about often.
I supported you.
Thank you, my friend. And
can I make a confession to your callers?
Go ahead.
I'm a registered Democrat.
There we go. See, I get Democrats too, guys. I get Democrats too. Yes, absolutely. So one of the things I talked about, because I knew jury nullification was basically a non-starter, so I didn't talk much about it. I know Ben's probably mad at me right now, but I didn't really talk much about jury nullification. It's not
Justice Sotomayor has actually said things to the effect that we should start thinking about this as a potential, as something we should basically think about. She didn't make too strong a statement, but
right.
She opened the discussion on it.
But I talked about the idea of non-enforcement, and I talked about the idea of pardoning. And my thought process was, if as an executive, every time a certain crime, right, is someone's convicted for a certain crime, the governor starts giving blanket pardons for those crimes. Assuming he doesn't get impeached, would that stop DAs from prosecuting?
No.
They would just keep prosecuting and just keep getting pardoned. Like, I was going to pardon it, but I'm keep going.
Right.
Why?
Because
here's what I would say, right?
Okay.
Prosecutor decides I'm going to, prosecute whatever low-level marijuana, weed stuff. And I go, don't bother. My people are watching. The second you do it, I'm just going to pardon them. Don't waste your time. They do it. They prosecute. They convict. I give them a pardon. They prosecute. They convict. I give them a pardon. Right? So now my piece now goes to them, public opinion. This prosecutor Jane Doe, she just spent $2,000, $4,000, $8,000 of your taxpayer dollars prosecuting someone that she knew I was going to pardon. Not just once, twice. She's thrown your money in the garbage twice. By the way, she's up for re-election.
You just completed a 62-county tour, didn't you?
I did.
Let's assume you were governor for a second.
Yep, for a second.
Right?
Walk me down this road.
How long do you think it would take to get to you along this route, right?
What do you mean? What
if
get
the
to me?
local DA
Mm-hmm.
in, I don't know, which county, Lawrence?
Sure, Broome County.
Broome County.
Sure.
Right? Starts prosecuting a bunch of people,
Yep.
right? And the reality is, and what's the major city in
Binghamton?
Yeah, in Binghamton, and I've had friends many who've graduated from Binghamton,
Mm-hmm.
who've had some touches with law enforcement.
Sure,
in
yes,
Binghamton, right?
yes.
It would take too long.
What do you mean take too long?
You're in Albany. You're
Yeah.
the governor, Governor Sharpe.
Yep,
You're in Albany.
yep.
There has to be a mechanism to get to you.
You mean that it happened?
No, they're going to get arrested.
Yep,
The DA is going to prosecute.
Yep.
DA is going to throw the book
yep,
at these guys.
Yep.
Right? Because they have the local relationship
absolutely.
between the district attorney
Yep.
and the police
Oh,
department.
no. You don't know libertarians well enough. There's enough
Really?
Bens in this country, in this state, that literally one of them will sit in that courtroom or check everything out and let me know exactly when everyone's convicted of that. They will literally be watching. It happened. Email goes to my office. I will know the day they're convicted. I don't care what county it's in. There are enough Bens in my party that would happily, eagerly do that without being paid just because, and they would watch, and I would know the day it happened. So that part I got down. My brothers and sisters in this movement would easily do that. So I will get the notice from all 62 counties the same day. That I've got covered. So assume I got that part covered. Tell me what happens next.
That's a big ask, Larry.
It is. But
That's
that
a
one I
big
got
ask.
down.
That's a big ask. Okay, let's assume that happens, right?
Okay.
There's still a process
Mm-hmm.
that you still have to go to, even with the pardon. You
Sure.
have to get it to the court. You got to get a judge.
Mhm.
There are all these processes that are in
Absolutely.
place that are built into the system to prevent fast action like that.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? It is even now, if somebody wants to get pardoned, there's a committee.
Sure.
They go through a process. There's a review. Only certain things actually get to the person you call His Highness. Is that what you
Yes,
call
His
it?
Majesty.
His Majesty.
King
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo II.
Yes,
Correct.
yeah.
Yes.
There's
So-
very few things that get to his desk.
But
that he
but
actually
again,
sees.
I'm going to make this a priority. Whatever I made up the marijuana thing, but whatever the thing is, right?
Right.
If I want a prosecutor to stop, let's say I put this in place, and maybe you're right. Maybe it takes 2 months before it happens, or insert time frame here. But after 2 months, happens once, happens twice. Now it's 4 months later. Now I'm
Well, as a governor, you'd be able to remove a district attorney.
Mhm.
This is the great thing, and this is why you should be governor.
See, and now you got me going. Now, I'm
Yeah,
ready. All right.
you would actually be able to remove a district attorney from prosecution of certain cases. This happened under Pataki
Mhm.
and Andrew. I'm trying to remember his name. The DA in the Bronx.
Okay.
In the 2000s, there was a case where a police officer was killed, and this is before. I'm sorry, in the 90s, with Governor Pataki and Rob Johnson.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, there was a case where somebody was killed. I think it was a police officer. Johnson said he would not implement the death penalty. Pataki had him removed from the prosecution of the cases, put in an acting district attorney. So you could do that.
That'd be a lesson to them all, right?
Right.
Mess with me, I'll get rid of you.
That'd be great.
Yeah, but I'd be a tyrant though. But I might do it anyway. You never know. Maybe that's worth of being a tyrant. I'm not sure if it is or not. That's a problem. I'm worried about being tyrannical, but maybe that's the right answer. I don't know.
No, this comes up. Here's the thing. To their credit, and I am not at all a fan of the district attorney of this county.
Okay.
He who shall not be named.
Okay.
Right? But I am a fan of the district attorney in Brooklyn. I used
Okay.
to work with him, Eric Gonzalez, right? He is in the Hines tradition. He's done well. He's put his money where his mouth is, or actually continued the reforms, and has become the most progressive, potentially the most progressive prosecutor in the country, next to the dude in Philadelphia, Krasner, right?
Okay.
So they're both of them, the Manhattan and Brooklyn DA, have said that they will no longer prosecute low-level marijuana offenses. What that's done is contributed to a steep decline in the amount of people going through the system.
Sure. Absolutely.
And that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
That's not being replicated in Queens. And there's the Queens DA died. And so now there's a new DA, and she says that she's going to do that. Let's see. What's going to happen?
It's funny you brought that up, because in Queens there was a race that was very close, right? And one of the people is Tiffany Caban,
right,
who was running, and she actually, in my view, it is only my view, the Democrat establishment pushed her out. And to be forward, it's going to sound crazy for you, some of you libertarians out there. She's a democratic socialist, and I supported her because on criminal justice, she was right there with us. She at least was she was there with us. She thought the way we thought. She was saying things that we wanted her to say, and I was glad she was saying them, right? I was glad. I mean, she's not going to be district attorney, but I'm glad she was saying things that I wanted to hear. She was saying the right stuff, even though she literally is talking about Medicaid for all, but she's going to be a district attorney, so it doesn't matter. But she was just talking that to get votes, which is fine. But we actually supported her because of that. At least she was saying the right thing. Because in Queens, we were concerned because it wasn't going well. And to have her saying the right stuff.
After 30 years of Judge Brown and Richard Brown, who, in my opinion, and I will not say God rest his soul because he was a terrible district attorney, who died last year, there needed to be a sea change, right? But here's where I disagree with you.
Please tell me.
Tiffany Caban was wholly unqualified to be district attorney.
Oh, no doubt.
Wholly
No.
unqualified.
We're not disagreeing on that.
I'm not even saying Melinda Katz is qualified to be district attorney.
Yeah.
She's not.
Yep, correct.
She was never a prosecutor.
Yes.
And I think it's important to have people who understand how a prosecutor's office works. But I think it's also...
But nobody was running who had that.
There were a couple people.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't
Mina
even hear about
Malik
them.
had been a prosecutor. She understood how that worked.
I didn't even hear about them. One people I knew was Katz.
Jose
and
Nieves. These were people who understood how
they have bad campaigns.
They didn't have the support.
There we go.
They didn't have the support of either the progressive movement or the establishment, right? But these were better candidates than either of them, right? And so you got to understand, I mean, Mina Malik, who I recently got to know, because she and I both taught at Harvard Law School recently, right? So we were both teaching at the same time. We were teaching a trial ed class just last month together at Harvard Law School. I actually became a big fan of hers because I saw her during the debate question the woman who's now, the presumptive candidate, because no Republican is going to get the vote, right?
Right, absolutely. Melinda
Katz, and asked her a basic question of criminal law, literally, I'm just trying to think of the analogy for the layperson, what it was, the kind of question she asked. She asked, if you get a home run and no one's on a base, how many runs do you score?
Okay,
right?
Got it.
Or if you hit a grand slam home runs, how many runs does that count, right? If you understand the baseball analogy.
Right.
Melinda Katz couldn't answer the question.
Wow.
This is now the district attorney of Queens.
Yes. Yeah.
Tiffany Caban was wholly off the reservation, right? Because her claim to fame, she's 29 years old, had been a public defender, and she's a lesbian. That qualifies her to be district attorney.
She's queer, just to be clear.
Oh, thank you.
Just want to be clear.
Therefore, she's qualified to be
DA.
DA. I'm sorry. What have you done? You're a line public defender. Does that qualify you to be the chief law enforcement agent in the state of New York?
Let's go to another level of this, if I could. It's a change, a shift. And before we go to shift, you guys, if you want to be in a program, please give me a call. 573-427-5463. Totally different side. It's law. It's still the justice system, but it's law enforcement. particularly violent cops. In New York City, I mean, you may not know this, you guys aren't in New York City. In New York City, if you're a cop, you are literally more likely to be shot by another cop than anybody else. I'm not joking. You are literally more likely to be shot by another cop than a bad guy or anybody else. What is going on with are cops shooting more people, or are we just reporting more, or some combination, or where's your 2 cents on this? I mean, you've got to have an opinion.
This is tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of friends who are police officers who were in the department. I know wonderful police officers. I work with some great cops. To this day, I'm still friends with a lot of these guys.
Yep.
There are a lot of bad seeds.
Okay.
And I think it has to do with this shoot first, ask questions later mentality. I mean, the idea of this same week, just 2 weeks ago, we had 2 shootings. One made national news.
Mm-hmm.
One made local news. The national news was the deputy in Houston. Deputy was a Sikh, S-I-K-H, Deputy Dhaliwal, who was shot in the head, basically behind the back. He was a turban wearing police officer who had made a traffic stop.
What state was that again?
Texas.
Texas, thank you.
In Houston, he made a traffic stop. He was I think the first person in the country that was allowed to wear his turban while on duty as a police officer. He was assassinated. He made a traffic stop, walked away, turned his back, got shot in the head by the person who made the traffic. Obviously, he didn't think it was a threat.
Obviously, yeah.
Right? Because he had turned his back to this guy, went back to his car, shot in the head. That same week, there was a police officer, young Irish-American kid, who was killed wrestling with a defendant who had a gun.
He was killed by another cop.
Correct.
Yeah.
He was correct. And this is what, I mean, both are tragedies.
Yep.
But I really don't understand the NYPD one. The Houston one, who knows?
Right.
Right? Who knows? There was something happened. We don't know why that person shot the deputy in the back of the head when he had been cleared from a traffic stop.
Right.
Who knows? In the one in New York, utterly preventable.
What I'm saying, though, here is, I bring this up because you brought the idea of part of the police culture comes from the DA.
Yeah.
Right? But part of it comes, obviously, from the training, too. Why in the world, and I say this because in my own personal world, right? I actually used to work with the police commissioner. I used to work with Bill Bratton, former police commissioner of Boston, former police commissioner of New York, former police commissioner of L.A.,
accomplished man.
And in my view, one of the best we ever had, right? Most of the value that people say Giuliani got from this policing was all Bill Bratton who put into play, and then he left.
Well, there's an argument to be made that it was Ray Kelly under Dinkins who started most of the community police thing, and the Bratton just took that and got famous under Giuliani.
It is possible, but I remember working for him in the civilian world. For a short time, I was a civilian. I happened to work for him at the time. I was actually selling for him. And at the end of every meeting, you know what he actually said? That's how he ended every meeting. He said, "Go out and do good things." That's how Bill Bratton ended meetings. This is just the regular world, right? We were selling stuff. We weren't saving lives, right? We were just making money. And he would actually end it with, "Go out and do good things." But what do I see? And this is just me seeing from TV, media, movies. So I don't know how real this is. But in every TV, movie, media, every time it's, "Come back safe. Come back home. Be safe." That's what every guy or gal ends their meeting. Every sergeant or every lieutenant in every TV show and movie I see at the end when they're done talking to the cops, be safe, come back home. And I think to myself, why are you so afraid? Like, don't get me wrong, cops have a tough job. Very clear. I'm not anti-cop in any way, shape, or form. My father was in law enforcement. He was a cop, and he was also a corrections officer. So I totally get that. I'm not saying that cops don't have tough jobs. They do. They see terrible things. They are in horrible situations, domestic violence, drugs, prostitution, horrible, horrible stuff. But not dangerous. Not. Just, they're not getting shot.
Depends where they're patrolling.
No, it doesn't. Tell me where cops are getting shot. It doesn't.
There are places in this city
This
that
city.
are dangerous to
Do you know how many
patrol.
cops been killed in this city this year?
Tell me, Larry.
2 by other cops. 2 by other cops. There hasn't been a cop killed in this city in 2 years. There are 8.5 million of us, and there are over 20,000 New York City cops.
All right, Larry, this is where I'm going to disagree with you and
Please
push back
disagree.
here on you a
Push
little bit,
back.
right? There are places in the city where it is dangerous, and cops, they have to be careful.
Absolutely,
Right?
have to be careful.
What I'm
Of course,
saying
it's
is,
a
what
tough
was
job.
tragedy about that kid was, and I don't get it.
But I'm telling you what it is.
No, Larry.
The
I
issue
think
is they're
we
afraid, so they're drawing their gun on everything.
How do you shoot when your partner, your fellow officer is wrestling with another guy and he says he's going for my gun? Why do you shoot? There is an incredible likelihood that you're going to hit your own guy.
You are literally this is what I'm saying, right? Look, what should have happened once the cops killed another cop? What should happen is immediately, oh my God, let's rethink our training. What are we doing? Let's rethink our training. I don't believe cops are bad. I don't. I believe cops are poorly trained in a bad environment. That's what I think they are.
I would agree with you.
I think they're poorly trained in a bad environment. That's where I think they actually are. They're not bad people. The average cop is probably trying to be Superman, trying to save the world, I bet. Most of them probably want to do great things. My father wanted to. I get that. But they were in bad environments with bad training.
I think it's 50-50.
How do I know that? Because I was a Marine. We're taught fire discipline. We Marines, not me, I'm not a combat vet, but my brothers and sisters, we fight against people who shoot back. And we have harder rules of engagement than police officers do. And our people shoot back at us. And cops, they throw the gun in the garbage and run. Half the cops are shooting people in the back. I remember I was in a debate. And the debate I was in, someone was talking about the idea of should people who kill cops get more time in jail, right? If they kill cops. And I said, no, the cops are just like us. If they kill somebody, if they get killed, it's terrible. And person should be punished like anybody else. Punish people who kill people, cops included. Just because my loved one dies, I don't feel less because he wasn't a cop. And the guy next to me said, but they put their life on the line every day. I said, so do Marines. So do Marines. So what? Does that mean all of a sudden now there's a worse damage if you kill a vet?
Well, I think it depends on the reason you kill that cop, right? If it turned out that, you killed somebody and whatever, and then it wasn't because that person was a cop, then, the law is clear.
Yeah.
Murder one, that you have to have thought that this person was a cop. You kill them because you kill that person because he or she was a police officer, right? So the law is set up, I think, correctly in that situation.
But in this debate, they were trying to create a separate law. The fact that they were a cop meant more time in prison.
Well,
and
silly.
that I was against.
That's silly. If the person was off duty, you didn't know the person was a cop, and you killed him. I mean, that's
absolutely
silly, right?
Yes.
But here's the thing, and I can't get over this kid who was killed the same week as the deputy in Houston, and it's a tragedy, and people should be upset.
Yeah,
that these cops fired on this guy as he was going for. How do you shoot somebody?
I got to give you the
You're
worst
gonna
one.
Shoot in his place.
The one before, guy's got a fake gun in some kind of like chicken shop or something like that.
Awful,
fake gun.
Awful. God.
4 cops walk up, see him. He's got a fake gun. He's literally saying bang bang. He's saying he got mental issues. He's saying bang bang. He's not pulling a trigger. He's saying the words bang bang. Somebody yells gun. 4 cops start shooting. 21 rounds get fired. He doesn't get hit. They kill a cop. What kind of training do you have? And here's what they did. This is my biggest issue. At that point, someone should have stepped back and said, we got to retrain these guys. We got to.
It should have happened in the fall of 1999 with the Amadou Diallo case
100%
in the Bronx, right?
Yes.
This man who was on his own stoop,
Yep.
didn't speak English, turns around, he pulls out his wallet, these anti-crime officers. So that's another thing to discuss, is that when you talk about dangerous things, people put themselves, these cops before the war on drugs, now the war to get guns off the street. I know you have strong feelings about that, Larry, but they putting themselves. It should have changed in '99.
Yes, I
Once
agree.
the man pulls out his wallet and he gets shot. I mean,
Multiple times.
Bruce Springsteen had the song. I think it was 41 shots.
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that should have changed. Then it hasn't.
And that's my problem. It's the culture is not changing. And I go to my Marines. When we have a problem in the Marine Corps, something goes wrong, the first thing we do is an after-action report, and we change the training so it doesn't happen again. We go, that was a bad thing. We don't want this to happen, and we. The problem I find is we have situations where we think that by default every cop is perfect or every cop is evil, and neither is true. And we have to make sure that we're training them the effective way. They shouldn't be pulling their gun out right away. They shouldn't be so damn afraid. They shouldn't want to shoot all the time, right? Why aren't cops literally saying, put the gun down or stop or pulling out a taser or this? Look, I don't want them hitting people over the head, but I'd rather hit someone over the head than shoot them. I mean,
I'm with you.
There are many ways you could handle this. Anyway, someone did we just lose the guy who was talking about police brutality? See, a guy called. We were yapping so much we lost our caller. No worries. All right, I'm gonna still deal with this issue. I'm gonna deal with Daniel. I'm gonna have Daniel chat. He wants to talk a little bit about law enforcement also. Daniel, are you there?
Yes, I am.
How are you, Daniel? Talk to me.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question. Right now, as it stands, when in the course of law enforcement there are errors in the missions and people wind up hurt or injured in some way, the taxpayers are victimized a second time in the jury awards and settlements. So my question to the guest is, would he favor the requirement of professional liability insurance for all law enforcement personnel, so that there's some degree of personal individual accountability for any malfeasance or non-feasance?
There is a libertarian idea which you may not be aware of. And the idea is that why in the world, when cops make errors, does the state or the people pay for their errors, right? And why instead aren't they required, like doctors or any of the professionals, to carry their own insurance, right? So a cop has to carry his own insurance. If the cop keeps making errors, soon he can't be insured. And if he can't be insured, he's just erred himself out of a job, right? And if he moves someplace else, right? If you're a bad cop in city A, you can move to city B and get hired. But if you can't get insurance, doesn't matter where you go, you can't get hired. So that's and then the concept is if the cop screws up, then the cop pays, right? His insurance pays, right? So if he's a bad cop, then his insurance rates go up. If he's a good cop, his insurance rates stay down. That's the concept. What do you think about that?
I think it's great in theory, just doesn't work in practice.
Why
The
not? Tell me.
reality is that most police officers are not getting salaries that they can afford this kind of insurance. I mean, who's going to insure for shooting people?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't see it as any sort of practical reality or possibility in this situation. And particularly, remember, cops are state actors.
Yeah.
Under the law, they represent the state. So even the local cop, let's just use New York City, or I don't know, I'm sure where you were calling from in upstate New York, your local police officer represents the jurisdiction, but is also then, if they make an arrest, if that person, that police officer, he or she makes an arrest, that officer then is now the witness for the state in the prosecution. So in essence, they're both the city and state actor. So ultimately, it really does fall upon the taxpayer to cover that person.
Well, you said something once before. You said that you hated the fact that in New York State they say it's the people against somebody, right? Like
Absolutely.
But
I hate that.
You hate that, and that in reality, who defends the people? It's you.
Right.
You're the public defenders, and you actually defend the people.
Correct.
It's for the state against the people. So, but with that idea,
Some states are good about that, and they say it's a state. The United States government is actually great about this. It's one of the few things they get right.
Okay.
They
go ahead.
literally say, we represent the government. I get annoyed when a prosecutor gets up and says, I represent the United States. No. I will correct that prosecutor in front of the jury because they know better, because they'll know better if they're going up against me.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. We represent the United States.
Right. Absolutely.
You know?
So, but if we look at how much money is being paid out in certain jurisdictions, counties, states, horrible lawsuits, right, that are just being paid out. In theory, wouldn't we actually save money if we said, well, we're paying $10 million a year
Built
anyway?
into the budget, Larry.
Right, and I'm talking about a budget, I am, right? We're paying $10 million in lawsuits from our state actors, whomever these state actors are, right? All these dollars. What if we instead give them all, take $5 million and give them all raises so they can buy insurance? And we now say we're no longer liable, right? The county or jurisdiction or whatever the case may be, we are no longer liable. We're not paying. Sorry, we're not. Sue all you want.
Great in
we're not
theory,
paying.
try to find an insurance company that will insure police officers for shooting people.
I think you would find one.
Okay.
And the reason why I say it is,
It's not my area. If there is, then
the reason why I say it is the vast majority of cops don't shoot people, right? And that's a fact. The vast majority don't shoot people.
That's correct.
Right? Some do, obviously, but the vast majority of cops don't shoot people. A couple do. So they can make all that money on those who don't shoot people, right? And then they'll have to pay out on the one guy who shoots people, right? That guy they got to pay out on. The rest are just making tons of cash. What you wind up doing is you're doing what insurance loves. Government creates a market for insurance, right? You have to insure your car. Government made a market for insurance. You have to insure this. Government made a market for insurance, right? You're a lawyer. You have to have this kind of insurance. Government now just made a market for insurance. Yeah. So insurance companies love when government makes a market. We're not going to get rid of our cops. So we're going to keep cops. There's over 900,000 law enforcement officers in this country. Over 900,000. That's 900,000.
The numbers.
Yes, that's 900,000. All libertarians know that stuff. So yes, that's 900,000 new customers.
To get educated.
Yeah, exactly. That's 900,000 new customers for an insurance company. You tell me actuaries can't come up with a product that they could buy? Yeah, I think they would. And it's guaranteed government money. There's nothing that financial people love more than guaranteed government money. Boy, they wake up in the morning with a smile on their face when they know they got some guaranteed government money coming. So I don't know. My view is, I see your point. It's a very hard thing to get across. It's a cultural change for sure. I think you'd have people fight it, and to your point, and say this is illegal or unconstitutional, and say this can't be done. They're state actors. You can't do that.
I'm not sure it's unconstitutional.
But people would fight it, though. They would fight it.
Yeah, absolutely. There would people fight it. I imagine the police unions, certain police unions would fight it.
Sure.
You know? And I think actually it makes a lot of sense. This way you weed out the bad guys.
Absolutely. You know? It actually would make. I think it might make unions happier, because then they're not paying for this. Right? It may even make them happier. Who knows? I'm not really sure.
They may make it part of union dues. Who knows?
Maybe the unions become the guys who insure them. It's another way of doubling union dues.
Well, to an extent, that's what the PBA does, right? They represent people.
Yeah, but they don't pay out. There's a difference. They have to pay out.
Sure,
right? They would have to pay out then.
Right.
So you could buy your insurance through the union if you wanted to, and the union now gets a cut of everything and blah blah blah. So look, I'm a union mob boss after all. So yes, I'm not anti-union. I'm definitely not anti-union. But my point is, I think that could work. Daniel, did we at least deal with your question or no?
Yes, it does answer my question. Thank you very much.
Of course. Have a good night. Thanks for calling in.
Good night.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about when it comes to trying to fix a system. I don't want to focus on punishing cops. Not that we shouldn't punish cops who mess up. We should. But if we focus on punishing cops, then all we get is cops rebelling, right? When I covered the state last year, one of the groups of people who I talked to often were corrections officers. And for those of you who don't know, in New York State, for many years, multiple years, corrections officers did not have a contract. They went 3 years without getting a raise. And their environment got worse. Meaning now they were being sued, now they were being attacked, now they were being, hurt, all this literally being stabbed, and they'd get stabbed, and then someone would say, well, why did you let them stab you? What? I mean, things like that. There were all kind of problems back and forth. And you think, well, then they would learn their lesson. Of course not. It wound up being an environment where so many of them just didn't care. There was so much punishment, a lot of them just stopped caring. Horrible environment to work in. The average lifespan of a correction officer is 58 years old. When I was out there talking to these guys, mostly guys, there were some gals too. I don't want to be sexist. Most of them were guys, but there were gals too. Most of these guys I talked to, every one of them knew someone who had committed suicide. Every one of them knew someone who had committed suicide. Every one of them knew someone who was either an alcoholic or a drug addict, active. Right now, they knew a guy who was right now working who was either an alcoholic or a drug addict. One of those two. That's the environment they lived in. So what did I say? I say, I want to get you a contract, and I want to change the system, and I want to bring you aboard to help me fix that system because I wanted them to be heard to change the system. Now, some people got mad at me and said, corrections officers are evil. They kill people in prison, and some of them do. That's a fact. There have been prisoners who've been killed by corrections. That's absolutely a fact. And my point was, I can focus on calling them all evil and focus on punishing them. That's an option. Or I can focus on changing the system so people don't get killed anymore. And I think the cop thing is the same thing. While I do want to punish bad cops, of course, I don't want to focus on punishing cops. I want to focus on fixing the system so the bad cops go away and the good cops move to the top and the mediocre cops become better. What happens now is many of the mediocre cops become bad or apathetic. The good cops become apathetic or they leave. And the bad cops become monsters. Because that's the environment they're in right now. So of course that happens. So I'm really about system change. So let me ask you a hard question since I just went down that road. If you could make a system change in a criminal justice system, what's the number one thing? What would you change? How would you make, there's so many issues and problems I know. There's a lot of issues, a lot of problems. You could probably sit here for another 2 hours talking about all the problems in the system. You have magic powers. You can change one thing. What do you change? Or not even magic powers. You could focus on fixing one aspect. What do you work on?
The first thing that comes to my mind, literally as you are saying this, is the incentivization for the arrest.
Ah, okay.
So police officers are incentivized by the arrest. They get credit for the arrest they make, not whether that arrest results in a conviction.
Ah, there we go. Yes, got it.
So that would change if the police officer was responsible to ensure a conviction. And I'm not sure to incentivize him to cheat, but to actually make a good arrest that would actually stay fit, that would actually be prosecutable and sustainable and convictable. I'm creating new words here.
Sure, love it.
You know?
Good, yes.
For the district attorney, then I think you would have less stupid arrests.
What if you adjusted this? And I love this concept of changing the incentives, right? Instead of a cop or cops being incentivized by arrests, instead being incentivized, literally in today's world, by surveys. Does your community believe they're safer? Literally by surveys.
I have a tough time with that.
Second?
I have a tough time with that.
Well, let me go to two parts that I'm concerned about. Why I say this. If you tell a cop that he or she is responsible for conviction, it seems a bit unfair to me because they're not prosecuting, right? So if you've got incompetent prosecutors or anything like that, then they're going to be punished in a way or rewarded if they happen to have good or bad prosecutors above them, right? They have talented prosecutors. They can be kind of crappy and they'll still be okay. They've got bad prosecutors. They may be punished, right? And also there's always the incentive to cheat, right? To now falsify evidence, et cetera, right? That's a concern about that one. The arrest piece, though, I think is a double piece. And that is, if I'm incentivized by arrests, if I stop arresting, am I a bad cop? Which means if people are complying with the law, maybe I look like a bad cop because I'm not arresting anybody. What are you doing?
So, first thing, cops are given greater credit when they make a felony arrest.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Versus a misdemeanor. This was a big issue in Brooklyn because the issue that we'd hear from the street cop was, they'd put this through as a felony in Manhattan. What are you doing? And I'd be like, no, this is not a felony. This is, you can make anything a felony technically, but you know what? This is worth a misdemeanor prosecution. So the smart cops understood that and they brought better cases to us, right? The issue that you're bringing about, I'm not sure what you mean by survey, but like,
in some way saying if you have a safer community, then your police force is good.
Right. So this goes back to the whole CompStat. I don't know if you ever discussed this on your show, but the idea of which was started under Ray Kelly under Dinkins, the idea of statistics looking at precincts, and which was apparently William Bratton is the one that supposedly where it got national, but my understanding was a lot of this community policing started under Ray Kelly, under Dinkins, not under Bloomberg. So when you're looking at this and you're looking at the numbers, that this was made famous, to the extent that it was a famous show, is The Wire.
Yeah, I remember.
And in season 3 of The Wire, you had the CompStat meetings, right? Community statistics.
Yep.
So you had the commander who created Hamsterdam.
I remember.
Right?
Yep.
And you had the number of arrests go down. And ultimately, after a while, they figured out what he had done. Basically created safe zones for the sale of drugs. And,
Yep.
and at a certain point, there was a guy who said he legalized drugs.
Yes,
Right?
that's right. Yep.
And it was unbelievable. And it was amazing. And it was
But
brilliant.
in the TV show, it actually was successful,
It was.
right? And I don't know if that actually happened.
Until the Baltimore police department, the city of Baltimore police department, chiefs got onto what he had done.
Right.
Dramatically reduced crime.
Right.
Safe zones
Mm-hmm.
where as long as there was no violence, drug dealers were not assaulted, beat up, and all the people that were using drugs were given social services.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think the world is changing
Right.
somewhat.
So why wouldn't a survey be good then? In other words, why wouldn't it be some form? Maybe the survey is the wrong word, but in some way, shape, or form, you go through X community, whatever community is, and you grade it, right? People grade it. Hey, is this safer? And they go yes, or they go no, 1 through 10, or whatever that thing is. There's some way of grading it that says, this. I mean, we have technology to do this. We can do it on an app in theory. I mean, there's many ways we could do this, right? Maybe you go to the police station. Maybe you go door to door. Insert thing here. You do whatever the way it may be. Might want to make it happen to where now we can say, is it getting better or not? If it's getting worse, the police force is failing. If it's getting better, the police force is succeeding, regardless of whether they make 1 arrest or 1,000,000 arrests, regardless of whether they have felonies or misdemeanors. But if the people are feeling safer, they're winning.
Well, I think the problem you have is in certain communities, you have the brushback between the militarized policing
Yep.
of certain communities,
Absolutely.
which has gone over the top, to the lack of community involvement of these same police officers. So certain communities, you've taken this very militarized style of policing to the detriment of the community policing.
Absolutely.
The cop who knew his beat,
Mm-hmm.
who knew everyone in his beat, who talked to people. And now you have a lot of young knuckleheads
Mm-hmm.
going through the community. And, in black communities, you have these young white cops going in, trying to bust heads
Mm-hmm.
instead of talking to people
Right.
and building trust.
So let's go to that point. Do you think the criminal justice system is inherently racist? I know it's a loaded question. Answer any way you want. Do you think? I mean, this is what people will say all the time. It's racist. That's the problem. You got to blow it up and restart it. It's racist. It's racist. Do you believe it to be true? Yes, or is there a gradation?
Let me tell you, some of the
how do
best
you-
people that I worked with were
Mhm.
white cops who
Mhm.
patrolled some of the worst areas of Brooklyn, Brownsville, Crown Heights at the time, before it got gentrified, before Crown Heights got gentrified. I mean, some of these guys, I'm going to give you a shout out, Nick Salvitti, these guys were the best. Honest, decent people,
Mhm.
right? Who went through these communities and did God's work, right? And so I don't believe it's inherently racist.
Okay.
I think that there are problems, systematic problems, but when you have guys that are smart, who know how to talk to people, they built greater trust than like the militarized policing model that goes in here and tries
See,
to
I feel like-
enforce itself.
I feel like the
Its
individual
will on society.
I think like the individual cop is no more racist or not racist than the individual insert thing here, right? Truck driver, I don't know, Uber driver, insert thing here, right? The same. But I think a system does make them racist. I think it does. And I think the system is bad because of one critical thing, the war on drugs. I think the war on drugs has created a system that makes people racist. Let me explain my point here. Because of civil asset forfeiture, because of having to fund the war on drugs, because of having to get arrests, because of having to fund your own department, you basically have created a police force that has to hunt to survive, right? That's what we've created. It has to hunt to survive. So where are you going to hunt? You're not going to hunt in the gated community. Those people all have good lawyers. Those people know the mayor. Those people, don't carry cash either. They carry credit cards. They don't carry cash. Where are you going to hunt? You're going to hunt in immigrant communities. People who don't trust banks. They keep lots of cash. Small business owners, lots of cash. Drug dealers, lots of cash. Anything that's black market, lots of cash. You're going to hunt there. Not just that, immigrant, brown, and black, because many of them are afraid of the police. Don't know their rights. Don't have good lawyers. Don't vote. So there's no way of getting back. So you start hunting in these communities. As you begin to hunt your communities, you've got some guy, some gal, she joins the force. She feels like she's going to do well. She's not racist than anybody else is. But all of a sudden now she's trained that you have to hunt in brown, black immigrant communities. So for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, almost everybody she arrests is brown or black. At one point she believes you're brown and black, probably guilty. She begins to see it that way because that's all she sees. The thing I remember is I was a kid. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, youngster. And my father had a friend who stayed in the police force. When he left the police force, this guy stayed in the police force, and he had gone undercover for many years. And when he came back up from undercover, we were walking around the Bronx talking, whatever. I was little. He had a son who was like maybe a year or two younger than me, and we're all walking together in the Bronx. I still remember this. And he's pointing at people and telling them things like, yeah, that guy, yeah, he's gonna be robbing. Oh, that guy, yeah, he's probably oh, her, yeah, she'll be killing people. Say again?
It's awful. I shouldn't be laughing.
Yes, but that's what he was doing because he has spent so much time around so many bad people in the underground. It had poisoned him to believe that everybody was bad. And to be clear, he was black. My father was black. He was black. This was not a racial thing. I mean, maybe it was, but it wasn't because he was racist. It was because he thought everybody who I worked with was this way. So now all of these people are that.
That's the war on drugs, Larry. There's another aspect here which needs to be addressed. And
Please.
This deals with the stop and frisk policy under Bloomberg. Stop and frisk wasn't about drugs.
What was it about?
It was about guns.
Got it.
So these guys, and there were cops and again, remember, I haven't been a prosecutor since early 2006.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're talking more than almost 14 years, right? Since I was last a prosecutor. In that time, there was a mentality amongst the police officers, the cops, the anti-crime cops. These were the plainclothes cops who went into so-called the worst areas, and they were out there. They were hunting for guns.
Mm-hmm.
They were not hunting for drugs. They didn't care about drugs. They were looking for guns. So stop and frisk. You're throwing up 100 guys against the wall in a neighborhood to get like 0 guns.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
I forget the percentage of what it was. It was ridiculous. Less than 1% of the times you would throw up a guy against the wall. There was always some young black kid getting thrown up against the wall in a neighborhood, and you'd get maybe 1 gun out of 1,000 times. Well, you get that 1 gun, but how much resentment did you create in the communities, right?
Absolutely.
This is where communities stop trusting cops. This is where the rift started, and obviously it started, before Bloomberg, but the fact that the mayor took this very aggressive stance and supported this, I mean, people weren't stopping and frisking people in Fidei.
Right, yes.
They weren't stopping and frisking people in Tribeca.
Right.
They weren't stopping and frisking people in Park Slope.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
They were stopping and frisking people in Brownsville, in Jamaica, in Queensbridge, and the South Bronx, and wherever else.
Oh, Sobro, South Bronx.
Yeah. I mean, this is what was happening. And so it was the war on guns, and I know you're a big Second Amendment guy.
So you're saying this is really the war on guns.
Yeah. That's what it was. That's what Stop and Frisk is about.
But isn't that still the war on drugs? Isn't the war on guns, particularly in New York City, isn't that still the war on drugs? I mean, it's not like for drugs, but all the guys who have guns are drug dealers.
There were so many warrants executed, and I dealt with this. And again, I'm speaking of the early 2000s. I don't get these kind of cases as a defense lawyer. Most of the work I do is white collar, and occasionally we'll get a case like this, right? But the reality is that these arrests, they're looking for guns. They're not looking to bust pot dealers. They were looking to bust cocaine dealers with guns. That's what a lot of the warrants that I dealt with, as a prosecutor were about. So if there was this feeling amongst the cops, if you got a gun off the street, didn't matter if the arrest was, the gun was suppressed, and it didn't matter if we didn't put the case in the grand jury. It's Brooklyn, it's not Manhattan, right?
Got it.
The Manhattan prosecutor's idea is very different. They're like, because the appellate court in Manhattan overlooking Manhattan was very forgiving to Manhattan. Whereas the appellate court overlooking Brooklyn, which also overlooked Queens, which also overlooked Staten Island, was much more critical.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
So you're saying that that the war on drugs and the stop and frisk was stop and frisk. Doesn't that by default make a lot of cops who weren't racist? Doesn't that make them kind of racist by default? And I want to be clear, I'm not talking just white cops. This is Hispanic cops, black cops, Asian cops. This is cops.
If you look at the history of corruption in New York City, a lot of these corruption cases involve cops of color.
Of course. Yeah. And that's but people think, well, it's the white cops. No, it's the cops.
Yeah.
It's just cops. It's not. I think
It's a culture.
Yes, I think if it's not black versus white, it's blue versus whatever. Blue versus brown, blue versus black. I don't think it's white versus black here. I think a lot of cops have the same issue because they're doing the same thing. The guy from when I was, and I'm older than you. So when I was 9, it was still the 70s, right? So, and this is a guy pointing his finger. He's black, and in the South Bronx back then was still a little bit Jewish back in those days, a little bit, but it was heavily black, Puerto Rican, maybe a little bit Asian, but heavily black and Puerto Rican. Right, with a little bit Jewish, a little bit Asian in it. And he was pointing at people who were black and Hispanic. They were black and they weren't Hispanic, they were Puerto Rican. The area was very Puerto Rican, right? Not Dominican. If you people know, there's a difference between Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. You may not know that if you don't live in New York City. There's a difference. But when I was
not
a
Mexican.
kid, that's good. And they weren't Mexican. Yes. When I was a kid in the 70s, it was heavily Puerto Rican. So he was pointing at these people and said, yes, these guys are all bad. His own people. I think his wife was Puerto Rican, who he divorced and eventually he actually killed himself. That man actually committed suicide, which again is another issue that cops, corrections officers deal with. Law enforcement deals with suicide issues tremendously. It's horrible. They have a harsh job, but they have a better chance of killing themselves than they do of being killed by someone else. And I guess this is what I keep going down to. I feel like, and this goes back to.
I love the fact that you're talking about this.
This is the fact you said something that made a lot of sense to me. You said you think the average person thinks that the district attorney, is a good guy no matter what, and everything he or she says is wonderful and truthful and perfect, and why would they ever do anything wrong?
The good guys.
Yes, they're the good guys. Always, they're the good guys. I think we have an issue with cops, too. A lot of people think that because they're cops, they're good. And the problem I have with cops, this is a personal issue that I have. And again, I'm not any cop, but there's one issue that drives me crazy. If you're a truck driver, if you're a lawyer, if you're a consultant, if you're a tech professional, whatever it is, if I told you about a lawyer who was bad, did something wrong, you'd say, wow, that lawyer sucks. You would say it, right, if he's a bad lawyer. You might ask me details. Is he really bad? Let me see. But if you found out, wow, that's some bad stuff, you would say, bad lawyer. Right? Cops won't say that.
Yep.
That's my problem. That cops won't go, yeah, bad cop.
Let me brush back on you a little bit.
Please.
Okay. The current police commissioner, James O'Neill,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, is an honorable man.
Okay.
I saw him on New York One before he was police commissioner a couple years back, talking about the case in North Carolina from a couple years ago, where an assassination was caught by a cell phone camera of a guy who had witnessed a cop chase some guy into a field, and there was a guy behind a fence taking a photo. It turns out he was a Dominican, he was an immigrant, and he videotaped this encounter. And this police officer was chasing this guy after a traffic stop. The guy was running his back away from the cop. Cop just squared up, shot him in the back, and then came by and planted something.
Oh, I remember that. Yep.
All caught on this guy's cell phone,
Yep.
right? This is what changed the world. James O'Neill went on television on New York One and said, this is before he was commissioner. He goes, that is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. That was an assassination. Now, I know some people will say that's easy to say and all this stuff, But contrary to your point, cops still don't say that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was like, wow, I hope this guy gets to be police commissioner one day. And he did. And he recently was vilified by the PBA, Pat Lynch, who went after him because he fired Officer Pantaleo, or said he was going to agree with the firing of Officer Pantaleo. And Pat Lynch took aim at Commissioner O'Neill for firing Pantaleo. Pantaleo is a bad cop.
Yes.
He's a bad cop.
Absolutely.
Okay, he should have been charged criminally. He should have been gone down years ago. Not having you and I and our taxpayer dollar pay for this this awful human being who choked this man to death, pulled him down to the ground, and wouldn't let go.
Yep.
I mean, ugh.
Yes.
Disgusting.
Yeah,
and I know cop friends of mine who supported Pantaleo, and I just think you're wrong.
Yes, and that's my point. These two guys that you're talking about, there was literally video evidence. Of course you got to say bad, and the sad part is some cops still don't say bad.
Right.
There's cops who support, I forgot the guy's name, the guy who killed Philando Castillo. I don't remember the cop's name.
Right.
That guy murdered someone in front of his kids. At one point, he's got to go, yeah, there's some bad cops. You just got to say it. And it drives me crazy that it's so hard to find a cop to just go, yeah, that's a bad cop.
Larry, actually, you changed my view on Amber Geiger.
Oh, yes,
You know,
absolutely.
You were the one who actually put things in perspective on her. And she got a 10-year sentence for shooting
Oh, yes.
a man in his own home while eating ice cream.
Yep.
And my initial thought was on the law. Clearly, she didn't go into that apartment thinking that she was going to kill him.
Right. I think that's obvious. Yes, that's not murder one. I get that. That's not, I'm going to go kill a guy eating ice cream today. I'm sure she was not thinking that.
Right. But, you know, in my view on this, and again, you know, at least when we were talking about it, I thought about it, and I said to myself, why is there shoot first, ask questions later?
That's my entire
mentality?
issue. And look, think about the reverse. I actually think she should be punished more because she's a cop in this case. More.
I would agree with you.
And people think less. No, you're a cop, you're trained. So you come into your house and you think this man is eating your ice cream in your house. I get it. You believe that. And I believe she believed that. Why is it, oh my God, pull the trigger, fire? Why isn't it, drop the ice cream, idiot? Why'd you take my, get up, I'm a cop. Why isn't it any of those things? Right? Why isn't it anything besides, why isn't it call backup? Why isn't it call 911? Hey, I got a guy in my house. Cops come. Why
That's the
isn't
first thing
any
she
of
should have
those
done.
things?
Hey,
Any
I
of
think
those
there's somebody
things.
in my house. Come
I think
back.
there's someone in my house.
Yeah.
Yes, anything besides shoot him to death. And of course, how can you not think it's racist? What if it was a white woman? Do you think she would have shot a white woman?
No.
Would she have shot an Asian woman?
I got to think about that.
Yes. I mean, I'm serious. What do you think? I mean, obviously, we'll never know. But do you think if it isn't racial, it's at least because he was a man? Again, why are you so afraid? You're a trained law enforcement officer.
The fact that she was sexting didn't help her either. You
Yes, exactly. But the point is, why are you doing that? And I want to think about the opposite. What if it was reversed? What if there was a man who walked into his house, into her house, black man, legally authorized to carry a firearm in his home. He'd walk into the house.
Which everyone is in Texas.
I'm saying yes, but assuming this guy was one of those legally authorized to have that home, the gun in his home, and be carrying, he draws his pistol and shoots her. You think he gets 10 years?
No.
No way in the world gets 10 years. No way in the world gets 10 years. No way in the world.
This is where you changed my view on this whole situation.
I always, in my mind, and I say this often, I want people to think of police force as an extension of us. I was talking to a guy from another country, and he was asking about how I feel about cops, libertarianism and stuff, and I said, look, cops are required. They're important. We have to have them. I got it. We need to have cops. I said, but I want you to ask you a question. I said, you see, we were sitting at my stoop at the time, and you know where I live in Queens, we live next to each other. So next to me, I point at the house next door, and I say, if you see a guy in that window, and you see a guy right now who's smoking a joint, do you think it's ethical? Not that you need to, but ethical, not legal, ethical for you to kick that door in, grab that joint from his mouth, and put that guy in handcuffs? He said, of course not. I said, then why can cops do it? Cops are an extension of us. right? I'm not saying you need to do it. I don't mind you outsourcing the violence to cops. We pay taxes for that. I get that. I'm okay with that. But ethically, if you couldn't do it, why can cops? They're an extension of us. Now the reverse. You look out there, there's a guy, he's got a knife, he's getting ready to stab a kid. Is it ethical? I'm not saying you should do it, but is it ethical for you to kick that door in, grab that knife from him, and throw him in a corner, hold the knife at him until the cops come? Of course, yeah, of course it's ethical. So cops should do that. Yeah. They're an outcropping of us. And so every time something happens, I always think, what happens if it wasn't a cop? What happens if it wasn't a cop? And if the answer is burn them, then burn the cop worse. Because the cop's better trained. The cop's supposed to know better.
It makes me think of that kid who was killed 2 weeks ago. The kid, the police officer,
Yes.
shot by his own team because he yelled, "He's going for my gun." Why would you shoot?
Yes.
Did you not think there's a good chance you're going to hit him?
Or go grab his gun.
Yeah. Why?
Just go grab his gun.
Jump on top of him.
Jump on top of him and grab his gun. That's my point. And again, I don't think these are bad cops. I want to say it again. This is a bad system with bad training, and these guys are messing up. And we think because we give them a badge and a gun, they're magically supermen. They're not. They need to be trained.
Add a personal story to that. When I was in law school, I took trial advocacy with the now deceased, may he rest in peace, Charles Hines. Taught trial advocacy. And we learned this story of, I forget his name was Diamond, this defendant was a police officer who shot, he was charged with murder, he was off-duty police officer charged with murder of Trudy Doyle, and it's a classic trial ad thing. I don't want to smile because of murder, but in the story, he shoots this woman.
The cop.
In the chest. And so they charge him with murder, and there's all these extenuating factors that says it wasn't murder and all this stuff. But one of the things that came out, I learned in law school, cops are trained to shoot center mass.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Right?
So Marines, by the way.
They're not trained to shoot to disarm.
Correct.
And so that's really important to understand that. Is that something that should change?
Why?
Because you're trained to kill. Cops are trained to kill.
Yes, but the reason why you shoot center mass is not because you're trying to kill. You shoot center mass to make sure you hit.
Yeah.
But I get where you're going. I mean, if I try to aim for your arm, I'll miss.
Right.
Particularly when I'm stressed, particularly when stuff's hitting the fan. Cops can't hit now with their current. 41 shots and 2 hit a guy. 21 shots, you only kill your own partner. They can't shoot now. And now you want to try to shoot people in the arm? Do center mass. Just have them not shoot as much. My point is, the job is hard. The suicide rate is high. The stuff they deal with is insanely difficult. It's just not that dangerous. And the stats are there to prove it. It's just not that dangerous.
Well, maybe you have a tiered system where some police officers are only using rubber bullets.
That would work too,
Whereas the highly trained ones are using actual bullets and called in necessary because system they have in London.
Sure.
Where police officers are not, using guns, and they only bring in the ones with guns on those serious situations. And of course, you create other problems with stabbings and things like that. But, that's a different, you got to ask, something has to be done.
That's my point. My point is the cop problem isn't let's blame cops. The cop problem isn't let's punish cops. The cop problem solved by let's train them effectively and have a better system. That's how it's actually fixed. You do that, you'll have better cops. Incentivize them differently, whether it's through the survey or through the conviction or whatever, all good. Train them better so they're not just shooting immediately. You do that, you're going to have better cops. I say it all the time, better systems, better outcomes. Without question. If the problem keeps happening, it's not the people. And that's something to remember, right? I talked about this when I was running for governor with the corruption. I said, everyone's getting arrested, everyone's corrupt. Everyone's not corrupt, which means it's the system that is either drawing in corrupt people because it's a bad system or rewarding corruption so much. If you ever look, and this is an interesting thing, if you looked at all the people who went to jail, who were around Cuomo last year and the year before, people were convicted, the vast majority of them, their defense was, everybody did it. That was your defense. Defense was, I couldn't get anything done unless I did this.
Don't get
That
me
was your
started
defense.
on federal government overreach and these things. You know,
Please, I want to get you started. Please, yes,
we don't have enough time left.
yes. But the thing that drives me crazy is you find a system to where everyone believes that we're all doing things bad, so they do things bad. Everyone believes it, so they can't get anything done when they're trying to get good things done. I'm sure many of those people were trying to get things done that were important for their constituents. I'm sure some were just bad people too. But they were trying to do the right thing. And they thought, oh, I have to play ball to get stuff done. So they get stuff done for their local communities, and it's illegal. And now they get targeted, and now they go to jail. How do I know that? Because their defense was everybody's doing it. Bad system. If you constantly see the same people going to jail, it's a bad system. What what's the Illinois governor? The last 3 went to prison or something like that? That's a bad system.
Right. Blagojevich.
Yeah, like the last 3 in a row were either arrested or indicted or whatever, but they're all going to jail. If that's happening, you've got a bad system. That's not bad people. And if we focus on, the reason why I say this is because once we focus on punishing the people, once we punish them, we then feel righteous, and then we don't fix the system. We go, see, I punished that guy. We're good. And the system isn't changed. We're waiting for the next guy to come through. We'll target him. Oh, we punished him. So it's like every once in a while we arrest or punish some guy. It happens to be one of the guys, whoever probably either is the most powerful we're jealous of, or the one who's the weakest, easier to get, or pick him off. He or she goes away, and we say, see, justice is served. This goes to my biggest point. I don't think we have a justice system. We have a punishment system.
I would agree with that in a large aspect.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, my biggest problem is if you look at how a system works and how people talk, this isn't just the system, it's us, right? You rob my house. I'm sorry, I rob your house, right? I rob your house and I take $3,000 worth of stuff from your house, right? You lost that stuff. I go off and sell it because I'm a thug, whatever I am, a bad guy, sell it. I don't care why, and that's gone. I took the money and I blew it away on hookers and blow, right? So it's all gone, right? That's what I do. Everyone knows how I love hookers and blow. So yeah, so anyway, so I do all that,
Georgia,
right?
he was kidding.
Yeah, I'm kidding, yes. So anyway, so I blow it all away, right? The cops catch me. And they go, don't worry about this, Mr. Varghese. We got this covered. We're going to give him justice. So I go away for 2 years. Now I go away for 2 years. Who pays for me? You do.
Yep.
You got robbed twice now. Not just that, all your insurance rates go up. You got robbed 3 times now. You got robbed 3 times now. And I just now got 2 years in prison. I now have a criminal record. There's no way of me getting anything.
And you come out much hardened.
I come out hardened.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do anything except go on a dole, which you're going to keep paying for me.
Right.
So you now get robbed 4 times. And we now say justice was served. Where is the time when the cops get me and go, great, Larry, you took $3,000 worth of his stuff. You owe him $3,000. And we're going to put you to work until you pay back those $3,000. You actually get your money back, maybe with some interest. That at least would be justice. Don't you want me working again so I can pay you back? You would think that might make some sense. It doesn't.
So America is all about punishment.
Yes.
Right? And this is the punishment society. We have more people in jail than Russia, than China.
Yep.
I mean, it is the prison industrial complex controls this country just as much
Absolutely.
as the military industrial complex does.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could, we have a couple minutes left. We could talk about this for 2 hours just on its own.
Absolutely.
And this is a problem. Why is it that so many people are in jail? And it goes back to the war on drugs.
Yep.
It also goes back to the culture of imprisonment that's in this society. And, one of the things that I think that I like to tell myself that I was better at, being a prosecutor in Brooklyn under Hines, was that we were more sensitive to this. We only put away really bad guys, right? And so guys that were actually violent, guys that hurt people physically or, rob them at gunpoint, those kind of things. I remember a great story, and I know we're running out of time, but of this woman who came and I will do this all day, and I make fun of the liberals. Okay. Because we had this liberal
Democrat making fun of liberals?
you have no idea how often I do this. But actually, you do. But this woman came in, and your classic liberal, coming in, and there was a young kid who was an adult, legally adult, but not much more than that, who had snatched her pocketbook, and she literally chased him.
She did.
She chased him through Grand Army Plaza,
Okay.
Park Slope. This is the 7-8 precinct, and literally she came into the grand jury because he was arrested because she turned
Did
her
she
head.
catch him?
Well, by the time she chased him, there was a police officer there who
Okay.
caught him. So he didn't get very far,
Okay.
right? And she came into the grand jury. It was written up as a felony. Came into the grand jury and was like, this kid needs to go away, and I was like, get out of here. Come on. Get your pocketbook back. Get your money back. Nothing's gone. And that's the mentality. It's a punishment society.
Yes.
Yes.
And
I
you see it
remember
now.
I laughed. I was like, really?
Yeah.
We got serious issues here,
Yeah, no, I think you see it everywhere. The idea of once you punish, it becomes okay. So, look, in the last couple minutes, what do you want to say? Something you want to say? Something you want to talk about? Something you want to let the audience know?
I just think you're doing great work here. I
like
enjoy.
that.
I enjoy.
That was the right answer. Yes.
I enjoy what you're doing here, and I enjoy everything you did. I supported you for governor.
Thank you so much.
And I'm a registered Democrat. The only reason I do that is to vote in the primaries.
But let me be very clear about something. He doesn't want to do it because he can't solicit, but I will do it for him. If you want to know more about him, you can go to vargheselaw.com. VARGHESELAW.com. Feel free to go there to learn more about what the amazing firm does, the successes they've had, and if you get in trouble, get your checkbook out because he is private, and then come to him. And if you get in trouble, he's the first guy you want to call. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure, Larry.
I appreciate it. Guys, thank you so much. Again, if you like what you heard, head over to patreon.com/Sharpeway. Support us. If you want some cool swag, head over to sharpeway.com. I will see you guys next week here on the Sharpe Way.